What's good, people? Welcome back to Someone's PC. It's been three months, 2 months since I posted a fucking video. I know I was gonna do the follow-up law video, but like, I got busy. I got bored. Busy, bored, and other bullshit came up. But doesn't matter now. Now we're in set 2. We're gonna have more content coming. I actually bought the Nami Nico Robin playmat. That's 2 players, and that should be enough incentive to not make me feel like I wasted money for us to shoot videos on, and then we'll just start uploading them from there. With me today, I have someone's PC player, Tyler Bollin. He's been with us since Digimon, and he's been one of my homies for over a decade now. And he is, we've discussed this before, you're my go-to purple guy. I don't play purple because you got purples back at all times. And I am not surprised to see you finally get a big finish. You didn't have many in the Digimon scene. And I know we've talked about it a few times that was kind of shit. And I do believe that you're pretty unlucky as a person. So like, Beostar was not it for you, right? So
No. Well, purple and Digimon just wasn't it with so much like random red getting parried.
Yeah. Red just didn't give a shit about your security or your life, just anything going on. All right, so hilariously, you made the run with Magellan instead of fucking Kaido. And yeah.
So I made the run with Magellan. I was actually, I mean, we talked about this. I was heavily considering and pretty much locked into playing Kaido up until like the day before the event, and then going away from Kaido, being like, man, I don't want to play Kaido and have to deal with like Smoker being paired against that, because I felt like that was just going to be like a terrible matchup. It's a terrible time. I know a lot of people were trying to play Smoker, so I was like, man, I need something else that's like feels good against Smoker, but also just feels like it has a decent matchup against like the 2 other big decks I expected to see, which is Whitebeard and Zoro. So
yeah.
So the inspiration that kind of like started this list.
Yeah. Clearly things worked out. So
yeah.
All right. So from now on, if you just came here for the deck list, there it is. We're gonna have it on screen the entire time. We're not gonna do that bullshit where we show you one card at a time and then flip through. We're not trying to do that. We're just gonna give you like 25 minutes of pure, just theory and bullshit that happened for the day. So the day before the tournament, we were driving to our locals, which we ended up not getting into because we didn't know they started at 5, and we were driving there at 5. So we just kind of showed up. We're like, oh fuck, all right, my bad. And on the drive there, we were talking about Magellan, things that are good in Zoro. And I had just sent you the Magellan list that topped like a week before in OPO3, and that Jailer Beast list, right? And then, would you say that's what inspired you to actually like take the dive on using this deck, or like even wanting to build Magellan for the event?
Yeah, like I thought that list looked like really dope. I mean, obviously it included like the new Jailer Beast and a lot of like new purple cards I think are really good in OPO3. And like the theology behind the list also is like, oh, it has a pretty decent matchup against Whitebeard. I was like, okay, cool. And then through more of the like as the week went on, I kept thinking more about that list, and I was like, I wonder if I can adapt this list more into like our meta and have like a good matchup against Zoro and still Whitebeard, and then see if I can like put it in tech cards that can like help me have like a decent matchup against Black, and how that would like go, like theory crafting, all that. And literally like, the whole like the ride there, I was like, man, like what's like a good way I can like deal with Black and like not have to play green, or not have to play like another like one Whitebeard or something like that.
A blatantly like obvious meta pick.
Yeah, and
or something that requires experience in like the mirror match and shit. Yeah,
and I just kept looking more at like the Magellan list that I like wrote up a rough draft of on like Friday, and I was like, you know what, let me just like look at this again, like rethink some of the options, and then kind of like just theory craft on my head like what the play style and how the deck would look like. And then played like 3-4 games on Saturday, and I was like, I'll just run this tomorrow. Like this will probably be fine. We'll get like an actual test on Sunday, and it passed the test. So here we are.
Yeah, hilariously. All right, so let's go into the tournament. 9 rounds. You finished 8-1. You lost second round, which is fucking hilarious. And then we were just kind of chilling in court, and I was like, "Hey, you still playing?" You're like, "Yeah, I'll run down. Like, might as well just play it out. Whatever. Get like a play mat maybe." What was your round like every opponent, every deck opponent, from round to round?
Yeah, so I played against a Luffy round 1, Whitebeard, which I lost against round 2, Kaido round 3, Whitebeard, Zoro, Kinemon, Whitebeard. So I played against 4 Whitebeard total, and 2 Zora, which were the main 2 I expected to see throughout the tournament. And I also expected to see a little bit more Hannibal, but I only matched against the 1. So
Hmm.
as far as like the meta spread goes, I played against the top 3 like meta decks of the event. Minus Smoker, I would say like I expected to see a little bit more of. So, but yeah, I mean, obviously the deck did really well against Whitebeard the way I expected. The round 2 loss was only notable. Like I lost the die roll. I lost the die roll 2 times against Whitebeard, so they're able to go second 2 of the games, and I really wanted to go second with this deck, which I'll talk a little bit more about later on with the when we go through the list.
Hmm.
But I think that getting second against Whitebeard gives you like a big advantage of like building your board and putting pressure on them, especially with your leader ability. And ended up just losing that one. They also just drew. They were playing like the rush Strawbeard
Strawbeard, yeah, yeah.
list, and they just went like vanilla Luffy on turn 2 into rush Luffy into Ace into 9-drop Whitebeard, and I was like, all right, well,
Yeah, you got it, dog.
yeah, you got it. And
Like,
again, like hit like a like Moby Dick like the turn before, and I was like, okay, like it doesn't matter. Like I don't know why this is in the list, but sure, like you just got it. Like
yeah, yeah. You're like you're playing both. What the fuck is?
Sure, like yeah. So that was how that game went. But then like all the other like decks or lists matchups. Yeah. This is what kind of expected. I mean, I'll go a little bit more into it, but like the Zora matchup feels like really good with this list. I'll go into it more as I talk about like the list here in a second. But
Okay.
nothing super notable happened outside of like a good push for the deck that helped me like have like a lot of like success throughout the tournament. Obviously, people aren't very prepared for the deck. Like I had to every time I went against someone, everyone's like, "Oh hell yeah, Magellan, let's go!" Like yeah, and then, they're excited at first, like laughing it off, like hell yeah. Like obviously, I know they're thinking like, "Oh, this is a free win."
Yeah, free. They're like, he's X1 right now. Oh shit!
Like, whatever, man, free win. And then like as the rounds went on, like people were still like, "Oh my god, let's go Magellan!" And then like as the game went on, they're just very like, what the heck? Like, what is this board? Like, what
am I dealing with this bullshit?
Yeah.
like,
why? Like, how am I supposed to deal with this? So, definitely like a tedious or annoying deck to play against if you haven't been able to like test against it or test against the list. So,
gotcha. Okay, so starting with the deck list, we'll just run through every card minus the leader. The leader just straight up says once per turn when you get one Dom -1, you get 1k power. Very very useful. Do you say would you say you often bring it up to like 7k or like not even? Like the 6 check's always good enough. Like they don't have that many 2ks, yeah.
Yeah, I often went up to 7k past turn 4. There's plenty of times where I had 1 Dawn left over, so I would do like if I had Jailer Beast just lying around, I would never really commit Dawn to the Jailer Beast on swings. I would just use like Sadie, Shiki, Hannibal, then just like clear smaller bodies, especially against like Zoro and stuff like that. They would just clear bodies without committing any Dawn, and then the Jailer Beast would just go for life without committing any Dawn. And my extra Dawn would just go to my leader for the turn, and then I would just play like a 5-drop or a 6-drop for the turn, or I'd play like a combination of like a Jailer Beast or a Sadie Jailer Beast Hannibal combination, then leave 2 Dawn open for an event to be on the defensive for the following turn to protect my characters. So there's often times like in the mid game where I'm like, oh, I just want 7 checks. I just want to like deal life damage or like get 2 cards out of my opponent's hand to like put enough pressure on them to make them feel like they could either had to choose at that moment whether or not they go for my board or go for my life. If they made like the wrong decision or like it didn't work out the decision they made, they felt like instantly on the back foot.
Yeah. You also get to play around Hell's Judgment, which is absolute bullshit of a card.
Yeah, that card's broken.
Okay, yeah. So that's sick.
Like, oh god.
Yeah. All right. So starting out, I guess we'll just go card by card. Hannibal.
Hannibal. I mean, we have Anami. It's dope. Being able to search like the best cards in the deck. You search Sadie for a 2k counter. She's also amazing on play. Just being able to like, make your board go wide without any like. There's no like condition for her. It's like, hey, if you have the Jailer Beast, just play it. So you're getting a 7 Dawn value for 3. Which is really nice. It's also just like against like decks like, okay, is green really going to like this Yamato and like kill it, or is like red like they're going to commit like a Seaquake or a Vista or something, or maybe like just a Robin the following turn to kill it. It's like not really worth their time to like hit her, but it is pressuring enough to like feel like they need to do something about her, and then they also need to do something about the Jailer Beast that it spawns in. So able to search like all these like really good like cards in the deck, pretty consistent, just grabs you a counter worst case scenario, or grabs you Hell's Judgment, which is the most broken card in the deck. So
gotcha.
It's good. The Shiki is just there as a potential trigger to help my board go wide, help my like the whole play style is trying to build like a very big, wide, threatening board that's also awkward for your opponent to deal with. It's also just good against Zoro, having a 3K body that can then like check like any of their tapped characters, or just force like a Vista down feels good.
Yeah,
and it's also a 2K counter.
Yeah,
so.
at worst 2K counter. Do you trigger it all against Zoro players throughout the tournament, or not even? Like it never came up.
It never came up in the Zoro matchup. I mean, every time against them, if I did have it in life, I needed to have the extra Dawn for the following turn to like attach my leader for a 7K swing instead. So I would just keep them in hand. I'm like, oh, like they don't really have a big board anyway. It's not really, there's nothing I really need to check with this. So I just add it to hand for a counter for the following turn.
Gotcha. All right, so Sadie, we already talked about her, playing her down, board go wide. It never felt bad to jam her, just like
nope.
Or like you find one off of Hannibal and you already open with one and you're like, hell yeah. Like
even if I just had the one and I didn't have any other 2K counters in the hand, I'm like, okay, cool. Like a lot of times early on in the turns, like a lot of people for the most part outside of like Whitebeard and some Zoros were just swinging like 5 at life. So I have from what you can see here, there's only 10 cards that don't have counter power. Most of the other cards in the deck have a 1K counter or a 2K counter. So I didn't mind like pitching like a Douglas Bullet or any of the other like extra like 1Ks in hand to like defend off early until I could have the extra Dawn investment to use like Hell's Judgment. Hell's Judgment just acts as like pseudo 2K counters throughout the day, being able to like block off multiple swings in the mid to late game and being able to like protect my life and protect board.
Gotcha.
So.
All right, moving on to the Jailer Beast, Mino Koala Boy. Yeah, Mina Koala. Good lord, Russ. What are you, fucking idiot? Yeah, 4 of each, obviously. Like, there's not much to get into it, but obviously one's a blocker, one's a double attacker. What was stronger, in your opinion, and how often did you get the on-KO effect that made, like, a huge game-breaking difference?
The Minotaur is definitely the MVP. He put a lot of, like, unexpected pressure on my opponent. They really weren't ready to deal with it. Notably, in my Kinemon matchup, I had a board of a Minotaur, Sadie, Koala, and a Magellan, and he ended up swinging out with like a double Okiku. He swung with his leader and swung with Law at my life, and I was able to counter out and like stay at 1 life for the turn. And then he played a Odin for the turn to pass on his turn to like present like a lethal turn the following turn. He has 3 life, 5 cards in hand. I do a 4 Donna Minotaur, swing in his life, put him down to 1 life, and then do 2 on Sadie, do basically like 5 check with Sadie, 5 check with Koala, and then I think 2 Dawn on my leader for like a 7 swing with leader, and then like a 1 Dawn on the Magellan, and then he couldn't take the last 7 and then just lost because he was not expecting a double attack from the Minotaur and he didn't have like the counter power to stop that. So from like 3 lives to 0, just like lethaled him out of nowhere, and he was like, yeah, not gonna lie, like I just completely forgot. Everyone I would tell them anytime I played a card like this has blocker, this has
double attack. Yeah,
I went very much detailed like what it was doing whenever I played the cards, and he's like, yeah, I just like forgot. I just didn't expect like that kind of like damage to come out of like nowhere like that, and just snuck the game out from that. So
yeah,
he's definitely the MVP. The Koala I never used as a blocker. None of the blockers in the deck I actually used as a blocker outside of like Uta and the Whitebeard matchup. I would just swing with them. I'm like, I don't care. These are pseudo blockers anyway. You need to deal with these bodies as you're swinging, even with Queen. Like, I'm just like, oh, I'm just getting in there.
Yeah.
The KO for both of the Jailer Beasts let you ramp a Dawn since my leader is impelled down, which came up a lot. It really would just basically help like put Hell's Judgment online on a turn that I could play like a Douglas Bullet or a Queen or a Magellan, and then still be able to have a Hell's Judgment on like the crackback on defense for the following turn, or just being able to have that extra Dawn that I wouldn't normally have to be able to do like a King play instead. Pop a card, get +1K my leader, then attach that extra Dawn I got from my Jailer Beast on my leader and do a 7 swing. So my opponent deal with the 5 body, but then I have to deal with the 7 swing the following turn, and then they have a King staring them down for the turn after, and then they're like,
what is this garbage?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so moving on to Uta and the 4 Whitebeard matchups you had, MVP against Whitebeard easily, like
easily, yeah.
Okay,
going into the late game, a lot of people, they're
sitting behind Marco or like lethal.
They're just sitting behind Marco in the late game. Like, oh, that's cool. I sit behind 1 Marco. A lot of my opponents had 2, like double Marco, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, I'll just play I'll attach Dawn to whatever characters I have to board because they don't want to swing at my characters. They're all swinging at my face. They're trying to kill me. All my Whitebeard opponents did Moby Dick on like turn 2. Like all did like Moby Dick into like 4-drop into whatever. Like everyone just did normal curve. Like I wouldn't say like any of my opponents except for like maybe one of the Whitebeards who do triple Moby Dick bricked. But even when he bricked, he had double Marco, so he was able to protect with Moby Dick anyway. So it's not like it was even like a super big deal.
Yeah. They get the benefit. They get that Marco privilege of being like, yeah,
Exactly.
whatever is in my hand, I'm good.
Yeah, I would say like all my opponents drew like normal like curve. Like Zoros all found their Namis, Sunnies. One Zoro found triple Zoro, and a Whitebeard. Like he had everything that he needed, or what
No,
you'd
no, yeah,
expect.
yeah, for
Matchup.
sure.
It just didn't matter. Yeah, so
Yeah,
Uta and the Whitebeard matchup in the late game. I would just drop like double Uda on 8 Dawn and just like look at them after like swinging out with my characters. I wouldn't swing against Whitebeard. I'll talk about this a little bit more until they're at like 1 or 0 life. I don't want to put Moby Dick online sooner than I have to. To avoid them being able to put on like crazy pressure against me and to like keep my Hell's Judgment value on high, I would just lead them and just like aim at their Marco, burn cards out of their hand because they would want to keep that Marco alive. So they're gonna like burn counter, burn whatever out of hand to keep their Marcos alive. So I'm whittling down their hand and until I get them to 1 or 0 life and I can just kill them or pressure their life from there. So Uta being able to like block like 9Ks from the leader, 9Ks from ace, like whatever, and then being able to like rest a Marco on block. She doesn't have to survive the battle. So she basically just does like a 2-for-1, and then I have so much of a board I can just like crack back on them the following turn and it forces them to have like a full counter power hand.
Yeah.
So just basically like just Uda chaining every turn and just dropping more Udas on board and forcing them to basically drop a 2K Otama out of hand to like drop her down and then like Quake it, and then they still have to like swing through my life or have a board that's big enough to like pressure my life. And if I just survive that turn, drop another Uda, then that's just kind of the game, or that pretty much how all that went.
Do you think it would be different against the Straw Hat, Strawbeard, or it's pretty much same game plan? Because usually they don't run Marco, if I remember correctly, and then they don't have Moby Dick. So is that something like you're willing to swing in more against, or? I mean, I don't know if we talked about it. You only played 2 games of this before the tournament, and it just goes to show like the theory that you have and we all kind of have as players in our area is like founded in solid logic. Where we're like, oh, we can just jam this to learn along the way. Like it's no biggie. My opponent's also learning the deck. Like they're learning what's going on anyway. Like while we're doing this.
Exactly. I say the Uda has less value, like without the Marcos. Like the Uda value goes down, but then the Hell's Judgment value is up. Like when there's not like all the extra DP or extra power that they're gaining from the Moby Dick, the Hell's Judgment now comes back into play late game to be able to like stop like the wide swings from them being able to do like 7-7-7 whatever. I'm like, oh, you have to commit to 8 Dawn at minimum to try to like do this if you want to pressure appropriately, knowing I had 2 open. So
gotcha.
Yeah, but she was also like a little bit multi-value. I'm like against Zoro too, forcing like jet pistols out of hand while I'm also like playing Magellan to like burn their Dawn down and pair it with Uta the following turn. It's like, okay, do you really want to burn like your 4 Dawn the jet pistol this, and then you can't really like Dawn allocate it properly to like the rest of your characters to like do like appropriate swings on me. I can just counter out, sure, and I'll just play another Uta and then force you up another jet pistol, and I'm just still swinging at you. So she has good value just overall against like all the red decks, and then also against black being able to do basically the same thing against Borsalino, just like they swing with like a Sakazuki or something, or force a Sakazuki out of hand to take care of an Uta. I'm like, I'm down. Yeah, burn that card, man. Like it's fine. Like, I'll deal with Borso with Douglas Bullet the following turn. It's all good.
Yeah,
like,
very very true. All right, Xray, fairly simple. It's been here since Kaido. 2K counter, Dawn minus rips a card out of your opponent's hand. Do you clutch a lot of like checkmate lethal scenarios because of X-Drake, or it didn't come up? I mean, obviously it's a very mid-rangey deck. You're going wide. You probably played everything that's here multiple times to like create an absurd board, but X-Drake is a spot you definitely wouldn't touch.
Definitely wouldn't touch it. I value it highly in the Impel Down matchup or the Ivankov matchup. I didn't play any today or on the day. But I do value it being able to like turn off Luffy ability if my opponent like over counters or over commits to like how they're countering or like keeping their hand like low. If I can get them basically down to like a one card hand, extract them to pass over to their turn, so they draw 1, then have Luffy. Their Luffy can't bounce my Uda, can't bounce like any of my Jailer Beasts or anything else to like help like mitigate my board, and they're kind of like, well, now I guess I'll just swing with my characters, and then I can just use like Hell's Judgment to like protect myself that turn. So And it's just a 2K counter. Against most of my opponents, I use it as a 2K counter. I
Yeah.
didn't really have a chance to play it, which is all good. He doesn't have a lot of time to come on the board, but when he does, they're very impactful.
Okay. So bringing up a little bit of the spice, you've talked about Douglas Bullet a lot. Um,
Yeah.
I've seen people judge you playing Douglas Bullet, and they don't really see the value in it. But
Yeah.
as many scenarios as you've brought up today, do you think Douglas Bullet is very much worth the spot, or like how do you feel about him?
Yeah, Doug Bull is like one of the MVPs of the deck. I mean, in my round 9 match versus Whitebeard, he was doing like a lot of like big swings in my life, and I had Uda blockers on an Uda blocker single one on board.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just swinging out like ace all of his characters, and I had 3 life, and I went down to 0 life because I knew like there's no way that he can kill me this turn. Like I'm down to just take the cards, and I was doing it searching for Douglas or searching for King to like basically like essentially rest a Marco the following turn, and then just like do like a big push for like a potential lethal,
Yeah.
which I ended up getting a King from life. So I'm like, oh, pop Marco, like swing at your life, whatever, and then like ended on like another Uta, and then just like looked at him with double Uta, King, whatever, and I was just like, yeah, this game's over.
Gotcha.
So,
Nice.
yeah, Douglas is like definitely huge. Also, just very impactful for me against like the black matchup. If they're just trying to sit behind a Borsellino, I'm down to Douglas, Dom minus wrestle Borsellino, get the 6K on my leader, then like get a card out of their hand or kill their Borso on the turn, and then just try to like grind them out of resources slowly over time. That's another matchup I feel like the Xray can come up a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to like, you know, burn cards out of their hand, like burn their resources out. They already have to discard a lot to do any of the removal
Yeah.
from their deck. So just being able to like whittle down their hands slowly over time, and then being able to just chip at them. Kind of approaching it similar to how like green mirrors approach each other, just like fighting for board first and then generating a big enough board where you can like push for lethal later on is how I kind of approach that. So
Okay. So the other 5 drops. Okay, so moving on to Magellan. Crack card, art looks sick. I personally love him. How'd he do for you in the tournament?
yeah, Magellan is really good when he's good. Other times he's all right. Like for the most part, he's cracked. Like he literally won me like a couple of games like on his own, just being able to put a body on board, trigger leader ability at the same time while also setting your opponent back a turn. Doesn't seem like a lot, but with the game plan of the deck, it ends up being very impactful. For one against Zoro, I prefer to go second with the deck. The deck is a very much go second deck in my opinion. Whenever you go second against Zoro, you're putting them on odd dawn. So they want to basically turn 5, do their Whitebeard play, basically counter out early, keep their life at like 2 or 3, being able to drop Whitebeard on curve to preserve the rest of their life and make it harder for you to close out a game against them.
Mm-hmm.
When you drop a Magellan, you set that turn back a little bit later, and you're able to build such a wide board. Your opponent doesn't really get a chance to bounce back from this after hard committing to that play. So when they're just countering early, they're like, oh, when you do like a lot of 5 swings early, they're like, oh, counter, all good. Like, I'm just gonna stay at my life, and then you put that Whitebeard off a turn, and then now they have like an 8 dawn turn instead of a 9 dawn turn, and they had to now like either like choose to put more characters on the board because they probably don't have because their hand's so low because they've been countering the entire game,
Yeah.
or they now had to just commit like a lot of like 7K swings maybe or 8K swings with their characters on board already, and then just try to choose to either like fight my board, which is awkward because they have like a lot of like weenies. It's harder for them to like swing on like kings and queens and stuff like that, or just like go for my life. And I'm just like I'm down for either at this point because then I have so many characters the following turn that even if I don't kill them that turn, when they get to their Whitebeard turn and I like clear their board, they drop Whitebeard at 1 life, and I'm like, oh, I have like all these characters I can just swing like 7/7/7 and just kill you. Like so. In that scenario that comes up a decent amount, it's cracked. And then also just against like a lot of other decks, like black really wants to get to the 10-drop Kuzan, green really wants to get to their 7-drop Kid, 8-drop Odin, like being able to like cut these off and turn them off like a turn. While also putting a character on board they really don't want to swing over. They really don't
no
want to
no one ever wants to crack him until like once I hit 10 dawn, I'm like, all right, now that thing can die. Like
yeah. And once you're able to double Magellan, like you do Magellan, then Magellan back to back, and then you start swinging at those Magellans and your leader, you're just doing 7/7/7, like burning cards out of their hand, burning life, and it's like at some point they're gonna run out of they're gonna run out of hand, they're gonna have to start taking hits, and it's like I can't really ignore this Magellan anymore. It's just gonna kill me the next turn. Then like what? You just got to put down blockers and try to like block out the Magellan and block out so you can like get to like that late game to where you can ignore it to drop like your big drop. Then at that point, if I just Douglas Bullet or King and then just swing through anyway, then it's like, all right, well now the game's over. Like so,
Yeah.
very very impactful card. I would not run less than 4. It's just amazing in the times where it's amazing, and just puts a lot of pressure on the opponent to do something about it,
Gotcha.
even if they don't want to.
Queen's broken. We don't really have to talk much about him. Like,
Draw cycle, he's
yeah,
broken.
he just does it all.
I swing with him. I mean, I never just sit there and just like hide behind Queen, Uta, and Koala.
Yeah.
They're all swinging. They're just getting in there. Like I'll attach a Dawn the Queen, 7/7/7. That's the game plan. Just hit your opponent. They're all going to be blockers even when they're attacking because your opponent needs to do something about them. So just swing with your Queen. Don't be afraid.
Gotcha. Only 2 Guildtessero. And how did he feel?
In theory, he's cool. In practice, he didn't really come up at all. Like I don't think I've ever even played him to board. I'd rather play like a Magellan, Queen, Douglas, or King on my turn 3. So never really came up. He's one of the cards I would cut him. I will cut him for something more useful. Also, like being able to add in like another card that has counter power would just feel more fluid with the deck. So
Yeah.
not super useful in this particular deck. I definitely think he has applications to be used in the future. But yeah, no, didn't really come up for real.
Gotcha. So 4 of 6 drop King, no 7s. We don't have to talk about King. Everyone knows what the fuck King does. No 7 drops.
Yep.
Why?
Just didn't really feel like I needed the 7 drop King. I thought combination of like 4/6 drop Kings, all the blockers, all the Hell's Judgment. It was just plenty to deal with Zoro. And 7 drop King doesn't really do much against a lot of the other like field in general. It doesn't really come up against Whitebeard. It doesn't really come up against Smoker. It doesn't really come up a little bit against Kinemon if they just do like for whatever reason like putting like their Yamato Kiku down with like a Toki. I'm like, okay, I'll kill like Okiku and Toki, but like that doesn't really come up, and your opponent doesn't really like play around that super well. So it's like this doesn't really come up outside of the Zoro matchup. I already felt the Zoro matchup was good enough to not need 7 drop King, and I wanted to cap out my deck at 6 or 7. I didn't really want to feel bad about playing like an 8 drop, 9 drop, 10 drop, whatever, and then it just get like popped by like Otama, Gordon, Jet Pistol, whatever, like or Black doing like Suru, Kuzan swing, Kuzan
Pop,
leader,
yeah.
There's so many
There's so many ways
combinations
to-
to clear like big bodies, and I just didn't feel like it was worth my whole turn to do that. Also, like turn off a Hell's Judgment or turn off a Thunder Bagua for the turn. I felt like it was more felt a better.
All right, so everyone knows that 4 Hell's Judgment is not going to get touched. Card's insane. Why the Bagua, and then how did it feel?
The Bagua felt amazing. I know some people were questioning like, oh, why play Bagua? Why not play like, you know, just the 4 Hell's Judgment, play other like characters or play like Blast Breath or play whatever. But the Bagua is cracked. The Bagua puts a lot of situations, and when your opponent obviously knows you're playing Hell's Judgment, you're playing an Impel down deck, you probably search it with a Hannibal. It's very obvious you have a 2 open Hell's Judgments there. So a lot of people will play around Hell's Judgment by just doing like 3 Dawn 3k over whatever like character or leader they're trying to swing on. And then if you know that's like their only big attack for the turn, you can just Bagua that attack, get a full clean block off on it, and then use your 1Ks to block off on any other attack. So it ends up acting as a pseudo Hell's Judgment by like blocking off like a big attack and then just being able to counter out like normal from there. And like it forces your opponent to respect the fact that if you're playing a Bagua, that they need to do like a 4 Dawn over on whatever character they're trying to swing at, and it just like ends up over utilizing Dawn and making them overcommit to Dawn. And in her turns where you're able to like double Magellan, double whatever, they really can't afford to like attach that much Dawn and do a swing, but you kind of put them in that awkward position where they have to choose whether or not like, okay, so you have Hell's Judgment, is he going to use Hell's Judgment, whatever. And also the trigger on a life is just always amazing. Like even though this deck doesn't really care about ramping up that much, it's definitely super useful to get the extra Dawn. It's the difference between doing like a 6-7k swing with your leader or having like an extra Dawn so you can use a Hell's Judgment the following turn if you like take a hit early.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
card's amazing. I wouldn't touch it.
Gotcha. So before moving on to the other cards that you can possibly tech in, what didn't you like, or like what you're like, oh, here's what I'm testing to cut from the list?
Tessera for sure. Shiki didn't really come up that much. I mean, the Tsuki counter was kind of nice, but I could take him out and see something else going in that's a little bit more useful as something besides a counter. The Uta, though, very much feeling like the MVP versus traditional Whitebeard and other Zoro.
Hmm.
I could definitely see Uta leaving the list and something else going in her place as well. Um, but everything else felt amazing. Like as far as like the numbers of how I had everything else just felt good to
Okay,
have.
nice. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the tech options or what you might think about playing.
Yeah. So here's some cards here. Just making sure. I think it popped up.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
here's
you're good.
everything that is either considered or people talk about like why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? I'll just very quickly go through each of these. Starting with Domino. Two cost blockers are shit right now. I don't I don't like them. Like you play them on the board, they just get popped instantly. They get arrested by green. They get popped by black, red, purple. They just get like there's just no point. Like most of the time you're using them as a 1K counter, so why wouldn't I just use another 1K counter card that has more application to board? Even though she's searchable from Hannibal, I'd much rather grab a Sadie, Jailer Beast, Magellan, Hell's Judgment. So no, two K blocker or two drop blockers are just not it right now, in
Hmm.
my opinion. Who's Who uh, is not really meaningful to pop a three or lower outside of like Kinemon, it's like nice, but they're just gonna drop another Kiku or Raizo, and it's like whatever. You just Don minus yourself, and now you potentially turned yourself off of a King turn,
Yeah,
or
for a
a
garbage 3/3 no counter power, and
yeah,
you're
for a
like
three three
shit,
that you know,
fucking
now they
garbage.
commit Dawn to like swinging with, and it's like you really don't have a lot of the Dawn, and it's like doesn't have counter power, and it's like maybe if you trigger it out of life in certain situations, it's too situational. Like I think the card is fucking terrible. I know my first stream match, the commentators brought up like, oh, Who's Who could be in the deck. This come out of
You're
life
like
or
you're like
whatever.
God no.
And I was like, yeah, if I'm playing this garbage, there's no
Yeah,
way.
there's
So
no shot of
don't
X
play it.
one. I'm X one playing
Yeah,
this.
like don't play this garbage. It's just not good.
Yeah.
The Jack I really do want to play, and I regret not playing it. Speaking back to my philosophy of like, oh, I want this to be more of like a resource grind deck and just try to like burn cards out of their hand for like efficient swings and everything like that. He just fits into it very well while also giving you the Dawn minus in an earlier sense to help trigger your leader earlier. Really good. Stats are amazing. I think having 4K natural is really good because it forces two cards for red if they want to pop it, or forces a jet pistol. If you jet pistol this, like, oh hell yeah, I'm super down. That's
Yeah.
value city.
Yeah.
And against like just having a 1K counter worst case scenario, I definitely want to fit this card in and test this card out. The Shiru being a searchable impel down that can pop a one drop. Obviously for the Zora matchup, uh, you just have so much already. You don't need it.
Yeah.
Um, King, same thing. You just have so much, you don't really need it. Seven Dawn's a little awkward. Having Odd Dawn makes it a little bit more awkward to be able to keep events open in the late game, which you really need to survive the mid to late game swings. Um, Douglas Bullet and Kaido being like two late game options I see people play a lot. Um, the Douglas Bullet, if like green was more prevalent, like Protect the Kid was more prevalent, I would feel like I need this card.
Hmm.
Um, it's just being able to use the Dom -4 and get the double attack, like it's just a little awkward at the stage of the game that you can drop him, where the Minotaur already gives you double attack like in the early mid game, and once you commit like your 8 Dawn, it's a little tough for the set to get to 8 Dawn because you're not consistently ramping if they don't pop your Jailer Beast.
Hmm.
So, and you really want to not feel bad about using your Dawn minus effects. Like you don't want to feel bad about using like an early, any on player on swing Dawn minus or using Hell's Judgment aggressively early. So any of these 8-9 drops feel kind of bad at times because like it makes you feel like you can't use the power cards in your deck at the times that you really want to use them.
Yeah. And
Um,
then at best it's a dead card in your hand, and you're like, what the hell am I doing with this card anyway?
yeah, a
Yeah.
card with
Yeah.
no counter power that you're just never going to be able to play that game. The only I would consider the Kaido. I really did consider playing two of Kaido. I know a lot of my opponents are very afraid of me playing the Kaido to board.
Yeah.
I know they mentioned it after the game with like, oh, I was afraid to like swing with this blocker or do this because I didn't want the Kaido to come down and like end the game or whatever. Because I was setting up in a position where there are times where you can set up like your mid to late game Dawn to where like if your opponent does pop a Jailer Beast or pop whatever, they do set you up to Kaido then the following turn. And Kaido having an immediate like Dawn -5, trigger your leader ability, and have a body that's swinging the same turn with good stat line, especially against Whitebeard. I do think there's merit to playing Kaido. I just personally just didn't want to play it.
Yeah.
But I don't. I would definitely
not be mad at
think it's a
some
good
not
card to
some
play.
not be mad
Yeah,
at
someone
somebody for
played it,
jamming it. You're like, yeah, that makes
yeah,
sense. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it makes sense. Definitely try it out if you haven't already. Last Breath, uh, shit card. I mean, it doesn't have a trigger. That's my main thing. And like the 1 Dawn versus 2 for like a Thunder Bagua that has an amazing trigger. It's just better to play that over
Mm-hmm.
Last Breath.
Makes
You
sense.
don't need more events than the 2 of those anyway. And Impel Down is honestly like one of the most neg cards on the play. I don't know why like anyone would ever. I see so many people trying to play like 4 of these and trying to like make it like the Hannibal's all the consistency you need. And like if you use this card and you trash a card, pay the 1 Dawn and use this card, and you look at the top 3 and don't see an Impel Down, you just burn 2 cards in a Dawn to get nothing. Like you just lose the game. Like there's just no way. Like I think this card is terrible, and anyone that's playing it, I think you should take it out of your list and put any card that's on this
On
list
on
and
on
on my
this and the
list
previous one.
over
Who's
it.
this?
Yeah,
Who's
I
who?
would
Put it back in instead.
I would put any of those cards over. So.
All right.
But those would be the cards I would consider if anything. So
Sick. Any like tips, final shout outs, or anything you want to say before we close?
yeah, I would say when using this deck, try to prioritize building a very like big scary board. Don't be afraid to swing with your blockers. Always opt to go second. I don't think there's a single matchup where I really wanted to go first. This is a go second deck. Don't feel bad about not playing a card turn 1 if you don't open Hannibal or Shiki. Just be fine like passing, and then like once you get to like your second turn, you're always gonna have a second turn play, and then be able to build up a board from there.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I mean, yeah, just shout out to someone's PC, shout out to all the testing and everything, and anyone who was in the chat,
all the 2 games of testing.
Yeah,
versus
all the testing beforehand, just like the theory crafting and everything beforehand.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Yeah, and also just anyone that was like in the chatter after like the tournament being like, let's go Magellan, let's go Purple Gang, like whatever, like shout out to you guys. You know, don't let people there's so many like random like salty people that are like, oh, this deck luck stacked the whole day, there's no way this deck like is actually good or whatever. Like I definitely am not going to sit here and say this is like a top tier like amazing like broken deck.
Mm-hmm.
Like the deck is just good in the right meta. That's what a like an off meta pick's supposed to be. Like,
Yeah.
you know, against the right field, against the right decks, like this deck can be a powerhouse, and if you're playing it correctly, you can't put a lot of pressure on the decks that it's supposed to beat.
Yeah.
And
It's-
also like, yeah,
That's like, it feels like all of set 2 is like that, because everyone tries to make like, oh, this is probably the best deck right now, and I'm like, no, there's no best deck. Like there's like 7 to 8 really good decks that everyone can pilot to like success, and we'll see that both in diversity as well as like the matchup knowledge and like skill from pilot to pilot, as like the set keeps going on.
Definitely. There's 8 leaders minimum, I expect. Like, if they win a tournament, I'm not surprised. If they at least top 8 a tournament, I'm not shocked. I'm like, oh, that's a really good deck. It's a really good leader. It's just like it needs to take the right pilot in the right time. Like this game is amazing in the fact that like you can really like push like the boundaries and like really like play off meta, play off whatever. And if you're like in the right field or have a good game plan of how you're approaching all these matchups, like you will see success. So,
yeah. Sweet, man. Well, congratulations on the 5th. And
Thanks.
thanks to Dex Profile, and everybody else. Have a great day, and we'll probably post some like gameplay videos within the next week or so once we get to play, man, and record them and stuff.
Sure.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a good one.